My name is Vivian Hale. I'm 35 years old, and this year I was erased from my own family. Not by accident, but by design. For most of my life, I didn't fit. I wasn't loud enough, polished enough, profitable enough, but I showed up anyway. Birthdays, emergencies, funerals. I stayed, even when no one asked me to. So when the invitation for the Hale family reunion arrived, and my name was missing, I knew. Not forgotten. Removed. I stared at the email. My brother James was on the list. His wife, their daughter Lily. Even my father, who once said family should be earned, not assumed. But me? There was an empty space, a digital scar where my name had been. Someone had deleted me. Cleanly. Quietly. Intentionally. And then Lily texted, "Sorry, Aunt Viv." That was the twist. The proof. They knew. And they let it happen anyway. Before I tell you what came next, the house, the will, the knock on the door, tell me this. Have you ever been cut out of something you helped build and told to smile anyway? Comment where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you believe silence isn't peace. It's a test. This is the story of what happens when the black sheep stops waiting for a seat and takes the deed instead. The words echoed louder than the click of my mouse. I stared at the email header like it had physically slapped me. Hale Family Reunion, June 2nd, RSVP below. Every name was listed. My father, my brother James, his wife, even Lily, their 10-year-old daughter. But mine? Mine had been there once, I could tell. The spacing in the list was uneven, a digital scab poorly picked. Someone had deleted my name. Deliberately. Professionally. Surgically. For years, they smiled while tolerating me, but this silence was louder than all the insults before. I sat back, breathing in that damp metallic scent of Portland's May rain tapping against my window. The room felt smaller, my apartment shrinking with every breath I took. This wasn't the first time I'd been left out, but this was different. Not a passive forgetfulness. This was exclusion with intent. A vibration jerked me from my thoughts. My phone lit up. Lily Hart. My heart squeezed. "Sorry, Aunt Viv." Her message read, short and sweet, like a confession typed too fast to stop. I didn't answer. Instead, I stared at the laptop again. My reflection flickered faintly on the darkened screen. Tired eyes, chapped lips. 35 years old and still the family ghost. The laptop lid snapped shut with a quiet finality, and I stood. A wave of something, not anger, not yet, swelled under my ribcage. Resentment, maybe. Or the slow-burning heat of knowing exactly what you will no longer tolerate. I reached into the drawer for my keys. The leather felt cold in my hand, grounding. Familiar. I didn't think. I moved. I grabbed a hoodie, my bag, my charger. My fingers worked on instinct. Not for work, not for escape, but for purpose. For the first time in years, I knew where I needed to go. Seaside Haven. I hadn't been back to Aunt Evelyn's beach house since the funeral 6 months ago. We weren't blood-related, but she had been the only one who ever looked me in the eye like I mattered. The only one who once whispered, "You don't have to shrink just because they're loud." Driving out of Portland, the gray sky thickened with mist. The closer I got to the ocean, the thicker the clouds sat over the trees. It was a 3-hour drive filled with silence, broken only by the low rumble of NPR and the occasional wiper blade slicing across the windshield. But my mind wasn't on the road. It was on Evelyn. When she died, everything went quiet. She left no will, at least not one anyone admitted to. My father handled everything, or so he claimed. I hadn't even been allowed into the house to pack her things. "Handled," he said. "It's not your concern," he added. But today it was. The driveway was empty when I pulled in. Weeds clawed at the edges of the cracked pavement. The house stood silent, wood siding bleached from wind and salt, shutters pulled tight like sleeping eyes. My chest tightened. The last time I'd been here, Evelyn had been in that chair by the bay window, wrapped in a blue shawl, sipping tea. Now the window was just a window. I stepped out. The key slid into the lock without resistance. Either no one had changed it or they hadn't thought I'd try. The door creaked open. It smelled of salt and lavender. And something else. Dust, perhaps. Stale air. Time. I stepped inside. Light spilled through the back windows, casting long gold shadows across the living room. The hardwood floor groaned under my boots. Everything was frozen in time. The bookshelf with worn spines, the couch with faded floral cushions, the coat still hanging on the hook by the stairs. But something was wrong. There was dust on every surface, except one drawer. Someone had been here, or wanted me to find it. The old brass key slid perfectly into the library drawer, like it had waited for me all these years. It made a soft metallic click, the kind that resonates deeper than just sound, like a memory unlocking itself from the farthest shelf of your mind. My hand trembled as I pulled the drawer open. I half expected dust and empty space, but instead, there it was. An envelope, cream-colored, thick, elegant. My name was written in long, looping cursive I knew by heart. Vivian. I sat down on the low window seat, holding it like it might vanish. My heart thudded in a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. Not excitement, not fear, something older. Reverence. Grief. The last time I saw Evelyn alive was in this very room, late October 2021. She wore a navy cardigan with one loose button and cradled a chipped teacup like it held secrets. Her eyes were sharp then, as always. I had joked about her stubbornness, how she still refused to let my father organize her affairs. She chuckled, then said, "You don't give foxes the keys to the henhouse, darling, especially if they happen to be your brother." I never asked what she meant by that. I should have. My finger slid under the flap, tearing it carefully. Inside was a folded sheet of thick stationery. Her handwriting was firm, precise, not rushed, not afraid. The kind of penmanship that came from a woman who believed in clarity. My dearest Vivian, if you're reading this, I've gone, and I trust you came here on your own, not because they allowed you to. You've always had more courage than they wanted you to believe. I couldn't leave everything in the hands of men who only remember I exist when there's money involved. This house was never theirs. You know that. You know what we built here. The summers, the stories, the space to breathe. I left something for you. Something legal, something binding. The details are in the safe, and the key to the combination lies where we first said the ocean sounded like truth. Trust your instincts. You always had mine. Love, E. I reread it twice, letting each word settle. The safe. There was a safe. And a clue. Where we first said the ocean sounded like truth. The library. The photo. I stood, scanning the room. The bookshelves stretched from floor to ceiling, most lined with faded hardcovers and old dust jackets. But one item stood out. A large, polished album on the center table, its leather binding recently dusted. I opened it. Inside were photos, some of me as a child, toes buried in wet sand, Evelyn behind the lens. There were notes scribbled next to each. Vivian, age 7, found her first seashell. Viv's eyes when she saw the lighthouse. Then I saw it. A numbered sticker on the corner of one photo. 18. It was a picture of us standing near the fireplace in the library, a giant photo of the beach hanging behind us. I turned. The beach photo was still there, anchored by brass screws. I pulled a stool beneath it, climbed up, and ran my hand along the frame. A slight indentation, almost invisible. I pressed. Click. The frame creaked forward, revealing a small compartment in the wall. A safe. Modern keypad style. My mind raced. 18. Could it be that simple? I typed 1-8-0-5, May 18th, Evelyn's birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside were stacks of neatly arranged documents. My fingers found a sealed, labeled envelope marked Last Will and Testament, Evelyn S. Montgomery. Next to it were notarized letters, forms with court stamps, even a certified copy of the deed to the beach house. All of it under Evelyn's name. Not my father's. Not James's. Mine. I couldn't breathe. At the bottom of the safe, nearly buried beneath the paperwork, was another envelope. Smaller, dark blue. One line etched in gold ink. For the day they come. I knew the knock before I heard it. Thomas Hale never needed permission. It was the kind of knock that didn't ask. It announced. 3 hard raps, each with the weight of entitlement, like the door belonged to him and I was just a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. I didn't rush to answer. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, still barefoot, coffee cooling untouched in my hand. The fog outside pressed gently against the windows, muting the early morning light and blurring the line between ocean and sky. The front door loomed, already bracing for his presence. I stepped toward it slowly, like approaching a sleeping dog you knew would bite. When I opened it, my father didn't smile. "Vivian," he said. Not hi, not what are you doing here, just my name, clipped and sour like a bad taste in his mouth. His gray wool coat was immaculate, as always. Collar stiff, shoes polished. He looked like someone who had already made up his mind about everything before the day began. "You got here early," I said. He stepped inside without waiting. Of course. Thomas Hale never needed permission. "I got a call," he said, walking past me like a building inspector. Local bank flagged a change in the property log. Accessed by someone outside the trustee line. I assumed there'd been a mistake. He turned and looked at me. Then I remembered. There are no mistakes with you, just defiance. I said nothing. The envelope with Evelyn's will was still in the kitchen drawer. I had barely slept. He circled the room once. "You have a key?" "I do." "Legally?" I walked past him, opened the drawer, and laid the documents out on the kitchen table like playing cards. "Read them." He didn't sit. His eyes skimmed the headers, and I watched the muscles in his jaw tighten. When he reached the notarized will, he paused. "This isn't real." "It's real. Evelyn filed it through a separate attorney. Probably because she knew you'd do exactly this." He looked up sharply. "Don't start with the conspiracy theories. You know nothing about—" "I know enough. I know she didn't trust you. I know she left this house to me. And I know that the only reason you're angry is because you didn't see it coming." His voice dropped to a near growl. "You were never part of this family's financial legacy." "Maybe because I was too busy cleaning up after it," I snapped. Silence. A stillness fell over the room like dust settling. He looked at me for a long moment, and for once I thought I saw something other than contempt flicker behind his eyes. Then it was gone. "I'll take this to the lawyers," he said finally, as if that settled everything. "You're not staying here." I folded the papers back into the envelope and tucked them under my arm. "Do what you need to do." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You never understood the weight of responsibility, Vivian. That's why no one gave it to you." "No," I said quietly. "It's because I wasn't afraid of it." He left without another word, and the sound of his tires crunching over the gravel told me the conversation was over. For now. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. Grace, mobile. I hesitated, then answered. "You should know your place," she said, skipping any greeting. I didn't reply. "Coming back here, opening wounds? What are you trying to prove?" "That she trusted me," I said flatly. Grace laughed bitterly, the sound sharp in my ear. She trusted too many people. I hung up the phone and whispered to no one. "Let them." He walked like the tide, calm on the surface, hiding undercurrents. Howard Klein stepped into the cafe exactly at 10 a.m., as if time itself respected his presence. His coat was damp with ocean mist, but he moved as if he'd done this 1,000 times, arriving in quiet corners to deliver truths people weren't ready for. I recognized him the moment he walked through the door, though we'd never officially met. I remembered his profile beside Evelyn's at a photo exhibition in 2015. She had leaned in to say something to him, and he had smiled, not with warmth, but with knowing. The cafe was almost empty except for a young couple by the fireplace and a waitress humming softly behind the counter. I watched Howard scan the room once before his eyes landed on me. He approached with a nod, no hesitation. "Ms. Hale," he greeted, removing his hat and gloves with practiced elegance. "Mr. Klein?" I said, rising halfway before sitting back down. He sat across from me, unbuttoning his coat but leaving it draped over his shoulders. "Evelyn left very specific instructions. Week 3 of May. This town, this cafe. You." "She always liked timing," I murmured. The waitress arrived and poured us both coffee without asking. "Reunions got us busy again," she said to no one in particular. "You wouldn't believe the rental prices this week." My stomach tightened, but I nodded politely as she walked away. Howard reached into his leather satchel and pulled out a manila folder. "You found the safe." I did. "And the documents inside?" "In my possession," I said, "including the will." He nodded slowly. "Good, that was the test." "A test?" He smiled barely. "She wanted to see if you'd come back on your own. Not from guilt, not from pressure, from instinct." I sipped my coffee. "Why me?" He leaned back, his fingers steepled under his chin. "Because you're the only one who never tried to take anything from her, not even her time. Everyone else, your father especially, saw her as an asset. You saw her as a person." Silence stretched between us. Outside, gulls circled above the sand, their cries muted by the thick cafe glass. He opened the folder. Inside were notarized scans, stamped documents, and a sealed letter. "Everything you found in that safe is valid. The original will was registered through a quiet channel, intentionally kept off the family radar. Evelyn was deliberate." "She always was." He slid the letter across the table. "This is for you. Personal, not legal." I picked it up, feeling the weight of the paper, thicker than standard stationery. Her handwriting graced the back of the envelope. "For the one who stayed when it was uncomfortable." "She knew he'd come for this," I said, more to myself. Howard's eyes darkened. "Your father will try to take it." Evelyn knew. That's why she chose you. I looked out the window, the ocean rolling in gentle, relentless rhythms. The same tide Evelyn loved. The same tide she had watched each morning from her porch, always with a blanket around her shoulders, like she was guarding something from the wind. Howard reached back into the satchel and pulled out a second envelope, this one sealed with a wax stamp. He slid it across the table, slower this time. His tone dropped, solemn. "Use this when they come for blood." They came dressed for celebration, not for a war they started. I watched them from the window as they spilled out of rented vans and luxury sedans, carrying casserole dishes and folding chairs, laughing too loud for people who had buried a family member just months ago. Red plastic cups, balloons. Someone even brought a karaoke machine. The irony cut so sharp I could feel it between my ribs. They looked at the beach house like it was their birthright, like they hadn't erased Evelyn's name from their mouths the moment she stopped funding their summer getaways. Grace was the first to approach the front steps, her pearl necklace gleaming in the sunlight. Beside her, Thomas walked tall, already rehearsing his dominance with every step. Lily lingered a few paces behind, her phone in one hand, a wrinkle of discomfort between her brows. I opened the door before they could knock. Thomas didn't hesitate. "Vivian, we're early, but we figured you'd be around to help set up." "You're not setting up anything," I said. "This isn't your house." He blinked. "Don't be dramatic." Behind him, someone laughed. One of the cousins, I couldn't tell which. Grace gave a tight smile. "Sweetheart, let's not do this in front of everyone." "Do what?" I asked. "Remind you that you weren't invited?" Thomas stepped forward like he always did. Like proximity equaled power. "Vivian, the beach house has always hosted the reunion. It's tradition. Just because Evelyn's gone doesn't mean..." "It means exactly that." I pulled the envelope from my coat pocket, the one Howard gave me, The one Evelyn prepared for the day they come. I held it out, slowly, deliberately. These are notarized copies of the updated will. The deed, ownership, all of it under my name now. The laughter died. Thomas took the papers like they were infected. His eyes scanned the pages, his jaw tightening with each paragraph. Grace leaned in behind him, whispering, "Is this a joke?" "It's binding," I said, "registered and witnessed, and if you'd like to verify, I'd be happy to put you in touch with Howard Klein." Lily stepped up beside me, not saying a word. Her eyes met mine, searching for something. Fear, maybe, or regret. But I didn't flinch. "You forged this," Thomas snapped. "No way, Evelyn. She would never." "She did. Because she knew exactly who you are." He turned away, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling Jerome. We'll see how real this is when lawyers are involved." "Great," I said. "Then you can explain to him why you're trespassing." The word landed like a slap. A few of the cousins shifted awkwardly, glancing back toward the gate. Grace muttered something under her breath and stepped closer. "You're making a fool of yourself, Vivian. Evelyn didn't really leave anything behind, you know. Just this crumbling house and a few scraps of paper." I stepped forward, my voice low but unshakable. "You wanted a celebration. Then celebrate that I am no longer yours to silence." There was nothing left to say. One by one, they turned. Some murmured apologies. Others looked away. Grace held her ground for a second longer, but even she knew the script was finished. Thomas didn't even say goodbye. The gate slammed shut behind them, and for once they had to walk away. They thought I'd be too sentimental to read the fine print. They were wrong. The living room was quiet except for the soft hum of the desk lamp. Papers lay fanned across the oak table like playing cards mid-hand. Evelyn's will, her estate documents, legal memos. I had already read the main provisions twice. But something Howard said during our last meeting kept tapping at the back of my mind like a metronome I couldn't shut off. "There's a clause in there that's going to burn someone." I ran my fingers along the edge of the binder and turned to Appendix 3. It wasn't highlighted or marked. No yellow post-it, no arrow sticker. Just 6 dense paragraphs in legal jargon tucked into the back pages, like a tripwire designed to blend into the floorboards. I read it once, slowly, then again. The words cut through my fatigue like cold water. Anti-contest clause. Anyone who formally challenges the legitimacy of the will, through legal petition, arbitration, or public dispute, is to be considered in breach of intent. Upon contesting, they forfeit any remaining claims to Evelyn's estate. It was written clearly, ruthlessly, brilliantly. I sat back in the chair, heart suddenly sharp and alert. They had no idea. All that posturing at the gate, the threats, the disbelief. And they never even paused to consider that Evelyn had predicted every move. I reached for my laptop and opened Zoom. Howard answered on the 3rd ring. "Vivian," he said, eyes immediately scanning my expression. "What did you find?" I flipped the camera toward the open binder. Appendix 3. The clause. He leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. When he finished reading, a slow smile spread across his face. "Well, she really did it. This clause is enforceable in Oregon?" He nodded. "As long as it's clearly stated and not contrary to public policy, yes. And Evelyn had it notarized separately. I remember she brought it to the firm herself. Said she wanted it on record, but hoped it would never be needed." "She knew it would be," I said. "She knew them," he replied. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, the wind began to rise. The waves slapped a little harder against the shore. I reached for my phone just as a soft buzz lit up the screen. "Lily, you okay?" I typed back quickly. "I will be." Howard cleared his throat. "Do you want me to notify them?" "No." I shook my head. "Let them walk into it themselves." "You're sure?" "They'll challenge it. All I have to do is wait." And sure enough, the next morning I got a notice. Petition to reclaim family property. If they were going to fight me in court, I'd fight them where they couldn't control the narrative. The cafe smelled like sea salt and espresso. It was the kind of place Evelyn used to love. Small tables, mismatched mugs, the sound of waves just beyond the deck. I chose a seat near the window, watching seagulls loop above the sand as I waited for Monica Reyes. She arrived 5 minutes early, just as I expected. Her hair was pinned up in a no-nonsense bun, and she wore a windbreaker with the logo of a local radio station stitched on the sleeve. She ordered coffee without glancing at the menu and sat across from me, pulling out a notepad even before saying hello. "I haven't seen this place in years," she said, scanning the room. "Evelyn and I used to come here after town hall meetings. She always had opinions." I nodded, setting a manila envelope on the table. "She still does." Monica raised an eyebrow. I pushed the envelope toward her. Inside was a photocopy of the letter I'd found. Evelyn's handwriting still crisp and unmistakably hers. It wasn't the will. It wasn't the legal weapon. It was something else. Evelyn's voice, undiluted, honest. Monica slipped the paper out, read the first paragraph, and stilled. Her eyes moved quickly now, but her hands didn't shake. "She wrote this to you?" "Yes. She wanted it to be read eventually, not in court. Out here, where it mattered." "She talks about being pushed out by her own brother," Monica said quietly, "about how they resented her for not cashing in on the family name. And about why she chose me," I added. "Not for loyalty, but for principles." Monica looked up, her expression unreadable. This is big, especially here. Evelyn Hale is still something of a legend in this town." "I don't need it to go national," I said. "Just local. Enough for people to talk. Enough for the court of public opinion to remember who she really was." Monica nodded. "I can do that. Title?" I hesitated. Then, "A Legacy Rewritten, Evelyn Hale's True Heir." She tapped it into her phone. 2 hours later, the article went live. By sunset, the comments section was flooded. Former students of Evelyn's, neighbors, former employees. People remembered, and more than that, they agreed. "She always said that house should go to someone with a spine," one comment read. Another. "I met Vivian once when I was 17. She helped my mom during chemo. Evelyn was right." It didn't take long for the blowback to reach Thomas. He called just past 9, his name flashing across my screen like a virus I hadn't deleted yet. I answered on speaker. "You're dragging our name through the mud," he barked. "Do you have any idea what you've started?" "I haven't even begun to dig," I said. And then I hung up. They wanted the house. I wanted the truth. The mediation room at the Clatsop County Courthouse smelled of recycled air and old wood polish. A long, lacquered table stretched between us, but it may as well have been a trench carved into no man's land. On one side sat Thomas, arms crossed, jaw tense, his attorney, Martin Ellison, flipping through a stack of papers with the kind of casual detachment reserved for men paid not to care. Beside them, Grace sat stiffly, pearls around her neck catching the fluorescent light like barbed wire. Howard sat on my left, briefcase open, documents neatly arranged. We hadn't said much on the way in. We didn't need to. Martin adjusted his cufflinks and gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let's start with what everyone wants. Resolution. My clients propose we sell the property and divide the proceeds evenly. That's a fair, clean solution. No need to drag this through court." Thomas nodded, as if the matter had already been decided. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my folder and laid down the original will. Notarized, stamped, dated. Howard handed over the high-resolution video still of Evelyn signing it, surrounded by 2 witnesses and the notary. I let them look. Martin didn't flinch, but his tapping pen stopped mid-beat. "That document proves the will is legitimate," Howard said. "And binding." Grace leaned forward. "Even if it is, Evelyn had no right to keep this house from us." I pulled out the last item, Evelyn's letter. Her words, penned with brutal clarity, rang in the quiet room. "To those who will call blood a birthright, Blood means nothing without character, and a name is worth less than silence when it has forgotten what it stands for. The room stayed still for a beat too long. Martin broke the silence with a carefully measured sigh. I think we're getting off track. No, I said calmly. We're exactly where we should be. Grace's hands clenched. This house was never yours to keep. Her voice cracked with something more than rage. Wounded pride, envy, regret. It didn't matter. I turned my gaze to her, unblinking. Then why does your name never appear on the deed? For a moment, no one moved. No papers rustled. Even the old air vents seemed to hold their breath. And across the table, Grace looked as though she'd just realized that Evelyn hadn't simply chosen someone else. She'd deliberately excluded her. I expected a lawsuit. I didn't expect the betrayal to come with perfume and pearls. The knock came just past 10. Too late for casual visits, too early to be an emergency. When I opened the door, Lily stood there in her gray hoodie and oversized scarf, rain dripping from her lashes, hands stuffed into her coat pockets like she wasn't sure if they'd betrayed her yet. Hey, she said softly. I was nearby. Thought maybe we could talk? I stepped aside. The beach house was quiet, save for the wind brushing against the windows. My tea kettle hissed softly in the background. Lily walked in and immediately gravitated toward the fireplace. She sank into the armchair Evelyn used to love, folding her knees beneath her like she had when she was 10 and thought marshmallows made everything better. You look tired, she said. So do you, I replied, watching her carefully. I heard about the article and the hearing. Dad's furious. Mom too. She swallowed. But I think what you're doing is brave. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She pressed on. If you need a witness, someone who knows how Evelyn really was, how she treated people, I can testify. I mean it. I nodded slowly, then turned toward the kitchen to pour the tea. Chamomile okay? Perfect, she called out. I was halfway back when I heard the sound, a small plastic clatter on the hardwood floor, followed by the soft tap-tap of paws. My cat, Astra, darted across the living room, batting something beneath the couch. I bent down. A black rectangular device. I picked it up. A voice recorder, still warm in my hand. I turned to Lily, whose face had gone pale. Her hands were trembling as she tried to reach for her bag, now tipped over beside the chair. Vivian, she began, tears instantly forming. How long? I asked, my voice flat. How long have you been their spy? Her eyes widened. No, I didn't mean to. Did they threaten you? Bribe you? I stepped closer. Or did you just think I wouldn't notice? She shook her head violently. They forced me, Viv. Dad said if I didn't do this, he'd cut me off. He's furious they're losing. He's desperate. I let the silence hang. The fire crackled behind her, casting flickers of light over her crumbling composure. I just wanted to see you, she whispered, and warn you. Warn me? I said, bitter laugh catching in my throat. You planted a recorder in my house. She wiped her cheeks with both sleeves. I came to warn you. They're digging into Evelyn's medical records. They want to prove she was mentally unfit when she wrote the will. My heart went still. They're trying to make her look unstable, Lily added. There's a psychiatrist's name. They're going to use it. I looked at the recorder in my hand, then at Lily. So even you were sent to take me down, I said. Lily stood, tears falling fast now. No, I came to warn you. They're digging up Evelyn's medical history. They wanted dirt on Evelyn. What they got was fire. The attic door groaned as I pulled it down, years of dust cascading like a warning. I'd always avoided this part of the house. Even as a child, the narrow stairs and creaky beams felt like they held secrets too old to name. But now, those secrets had names. Thomas, Grace, forgery, threats, and Evelyn, the only person who ever called me Viv without turning it into a weapon. I pulled the string on the old bulb. Its flickering light revealed piles of boxes, some marked with masking tape, others left to be eaten by time. Cobwebs lined the edges of a small wooden trunk near the far corner, its surface blank except for a faint engraving. 1932 to 2018. The photo album. In Chapter 2, Evelyn had left a beachside picture, barely noticeable, but the angle was just right. Behind her sun hat, there had been a blurry box with a brass latch and 4 digits stamped into the wood. I hadn't realized then. But now it clicked. She had left the code in plain sight. I knelt beside the trunk and brushed the dust off. 4 brass dials gleamed up at me. I rotated them. 1, 9, 3, 2, the year of her birth. There was a tiny click. The latch popped open. Inside lay a single item, a thick, weathered, leather-bound book. Its spine cracked as I picked it up. A tag dangled from the ribbon marker. For Vivian. The truth is never tidy, but it's yours now. I opened to the first page, heart pounding. Entry. August 14th, 2003. Thomas forged my signature today. He said it was to streamline paperwork for the North property line. I told him never again. He laughed. "You'll forget soon enough," he said. I was 71. I wrote it here so I wouldn't. Entry. March 3rd, 2006. Grace came with brochures. "It's time," she said. "A home will take care of you better than we can." She threatened to sue for guardianship if I didn't sign. I tore up the papers in front of her. She didn't flinch. The further I read, the more the pages became a battlefield of ink. Dates, deeds, names, betrayals. Evelyn hadn't just kept a diary. She had built a case. Quietly, relentlessly. Every conversation recounted. Every lie recorded. My phone buzzed. Howard. "I found it," I said before he could speak. A pause. "You mean—" "Yes," I whispered. "The diary. It's all here. Everything they did. Years of it." Howard's breath caught. "Then you're holding dynamite, Vivian. Handle it carefully." "I will," I said. "But I won't bury it again." I turned to the final page, my fingers trembling now. Her handwriting was shakier, the strokes less confident. But the words cut through clean. "If you're reading this, Viv, use it. Set fire to the lies." I closed the book gently and held it against my chest. Time to burn the whole thing down. They thought they'd buried the past. I was about to resurrect it, line by line. The conference room at the Astoria Legal Center was so sterile it felt unreal, like a surgical theater dressed up in law firm gray. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a cold pallor over the oval table. In the center sat a glass pitcher of untouched water and a speakerphone glowing green. Howard's voice would come through that box soon enough, but the real sound I was waiting for was silence. The kind that happens right after truth detonates. I took my seat at the end of the table. Across from me sat Thomas, straight-backed, fingers interlocked like a man giving a eulogy. Grace leaned toward her attorney, Martin Ellison, whispering too loudly for it to be casual. Lily sat at the far end, pretending to scroll through her phone, but her eyes flicked up every few seconds, watching, listening. "Let's begin," Martin said, glancing down at a yellow legal pad already filled with notes. "Per the mediation terms, we're here to—" "I'd like to start," I said, sliding a leather-bound journal onto the polished wood surface. Its weight made a sound that felt ceremonial, the thump of history returning. Martin blinked. "And that is—" "My grandmother's diary," I said, calm. "Specifically, Vivian Hale's personal account of events that may impact the validity of this claim. You all insisted on a complete review of family assets and intentions, so here it is, word for word." Thomas chuckled, a low, tired sound. "You're really going to wave around a dead woman's notebook?" "I'm going to let her speak," I said, flipping it open to a tabbed page. "Let's hear what she has to say about 2019. I read aloud, October 2nd, 2019. Thomas asked for my deed again, said it was for tax filing. I refused. 3 days later, the bank called about a transfer I never authorized. I went in, saw my name forged on a release form. I kept the letterhead and made a note to call Howard. I no longer trust my son. The silence that followed was sharp enough to slice through bone. Martin glanced at Grace, then at Thomas. Is this authenticated? I slid a printed page across the table, a side-by-side of Evelyn's signature and the one on the bank document, annotated by a handwriting expert. This is the comparison, certified by James T. Kellerman. Oregon courts have accepted his testimony before. Thomas's face lost color. Grace's lips parted like she meant to say something, but nothing came. You forged Mom's signature? Grace snapped finally, eyes wide. You told me she gave it willingly. You swore. He didn't respond, just looked down at his hands, jaw clenched tight. Martin scribbled notes, his pen trembling ever so slightly. I need a moment to process this. There's more, I said, voice steady. Vivian, Martin started, clearly trying to regain some kind of control. You're presenting evidence outside the agreed-upon timeline. Actually, Howard's voice came through the speaker, crisp and remote. As co-executor of Evelyn Hale's estate, I confirmed the diary was logged, scanned, and notarized by my office 2 years ago. This falls well within admissible range. Thomas shot a look at the speakerphone like he wanted to unplug it. Lily flinched. I turned a page, laid it flat. This is page 1, I said softly, letting my words spread like ink into every crevice of the room. And we're only getting started. Oh, Grace, that was just page 1. Some masks are held up by pride, others by pure fear. I sat cross-legged on the living room rug, laptop balanced on the coffee table, a ring light softly glowing behind me. The old oak beams of the beach house loomed overhead like quiet witnesses. Evelyn's house. Not theirs. Not anymore. I opened the Nextdoor app and tapped Go Live. A soft countdown appeared. 3, 2, 1. The red light blinked. Live. Hi, I said to the screen, heart thudding. I'm Vivian Hale. Many of you knew my grandmother, Evelyn. Some of you called her eccentric. Some called her kind. All of you called her neighbor. As the view count ticked upward, comments began to roll in. Vivian? From Evelyn's house? She's live? What's going on? I want to share something she left behind, I said. It's not easy to watch, but it's the truth. I clicked to play the video. The screen shifted, grainy at first, then clearer. Evelyn sat in her chair by the sea-facing window, wearing the green cardigan she always swore was too old to throw away. Her voice was calm, but the weariness behind it was sharp. You want me to sign it? She asked off camera. Thomas's voice came in low and cold. Yes, just the renaming clause. Evelyn, the house can't stay under your name forever. It's outdated. Evelyn sighed. It's not about the name, Thomas. It's about erasure. You sign, or this family walks away. No visits, no calls, nothing. A pause. It's your choice. The screen stayed still. Evelyn didn't move. In the background, through the open hallway, Grace's voice cut in like a blade. She'll cave. She always does. I leaned back, watching the comments erupt. Is that really him? Oh my God, this is sick. I used to go to church with them. Can she sue them? Poor Evelyn. Then came the shares, first 10, then hundreds. Facebook, local Reddit, Instagram. Someone had ripped it and posted it on TikTok with the caption, "They tried to erase Grandma." She hit record. My phone buzzed violently. Texts, emails. Even Monica's reporter handle popped into the live chat. Verifying. Can I call you? But I wasn't done yet. I turned the camera back on myself. She knew this day would come, I said quietly. so she left the truth behind, for everyone to see. Across town, at the courthouse, I imagined Thomas's phone exploding with messages. I imagined Grace pacing the kitchen, rage boiling beneath her designer blouse. I imagined the family name they'd guarded so carefully now spelled out in hashtags they couldn't control. I didn't have to wait long. My phone pinged with a message from Monica. Vivian, the city council wants to talk about Evelyn's legacy. Truth is heavy. When it lands, it cracks everything built on lies. Martin Ellison's office was quiet except for the rustle of papers and the occasional beep from his assistant's keyboard in the next room. Thomas sat stiff in one of the leather chairs, jaw locked, eyes fixed on the framed certificate hanging crooked behind the desk. Grace was next to him, mascara smudged beneath one eye, arms crossed in a posture that screamed denial. Martin tossed a file on the table. First National has pulled their offer. They won't back your condo project. Thomas didn't blink. They said why? They didn't have to, Martin said. That live stream's been clipped and re-uploaded more than 50,000 times. Their board had it translated into liability language before your morning coffee. Public image matters, Thomas. Yours is ash. Grace's voice cracked. We can sue her for defamation, for breach of... There's nothing defamatory about a recording of your own words. Martin snapped. What do you want to sue her for? Pressing play? The silence afterward was suffocating. Thomas reached for the file again, but didn't open it. His hands trembled just slightly. Across town, the pews of St. Martha's were emptier than usual for a Thursday. Reverend Klein stood at the pulpit, flanked by two parishioners with folded hands and tight smiles. A letter had just gone out, a carefully worded, unambiguous statement. In light of recent revelations regarding Mr. and Mrs. Hale's conduct toward the late Evelyn Hale, St. Martha's has decided to relieve them of their honorary roles effective immediately. This decision aligns with our values of compassion, honesty, and dignity. Grace saw the post before Thomas did. She had been sitting in the passenger seat of their black SUV, refreshing her phone with a manic rhythm. When it popped up, she let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. They've cut us off, she whispered. After everything we donated, after the school wing. Thomas didn't respond. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. You promised this wouldn't go public, she hissed. You said Vivian would back down. He turned to her, slowly. This was never supposed to go public. You said she was weak. She was, until Evelyn gave her teeth. Back at the beach house, I watched the storm unfold from behind a cup of black coffee. Monica had forwarded the church's statement to me without commentary, just a single emoji. I didn't respond. The sea was calm outside the window, the tide brushing softly against the sand like a memory that had stopped trying to be forgiven. My inbox pinged. From Howard Klein. Subject, their move's done. Now it's your move, Viv. Winning isn't loud. Sometimes it's just peace. The breeze at the seaside park carried the scent of salt, pine, and something softer. The lilacs planted along the footpath to Evelyn's tree. The red pine stood tall and impossibly steady. The same tree Evelyn had planted after her sister's funeral, when I was 10 and still believed families didn't fracture. Now, a small crowd circled its base, their voices hushed, their eyes full. A new bronze plaque shimmered in the afternoon light. I hadn't seen it up close yet. Monica met me near the path, holding a bouquet of pale yellow tulips. They're from Howard, she said quietly. He couldn't make it in person, but he sent a note. I unfolded the envelope, fingers trembling from more than the breeze. To the one Evelyn trusted most, walk proudly. You've earned the silence. HK. I folded the note again and slipped it into my coat pocket. My heart felt strangely weightless. When I stepped toward the small platform, the murmurs faded. A few town officials nodded to me, but it was the everyday faces that struck me most. The librarian who'd once warned Evelyn about budget cuts, the grocer who saved her favorite tea, the child from 3 doors down now holding a single pine cone like it was sacred. I looked out at them. then up at the red pine. She gave me shelter, I said, voice even, measured. Not just walls, but belief, in the hardest parts of myself. When no one else saw me, she did. A gentle hush. Someone coughed, and then applause. Not thunderous, not forced, just right. Monica stepped forward again, holding something heavy wrapped in velvet. She smiled and unwrapped it carefully, revealing a polished bronze replica of the plaque now mounted at the tree's base. The inscription read, "Vivian Hale, keeper of her legacy." I didn't move. For a breathless moment, I couldn't. Then Lily stepped beside me, her arms tentative at first, then firm. She hugged me. Not as an apology, as a daughter would a mother figure she'd almost lost. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I whispered back. From the front row, an elderly man with a windbreaker zipped to his neck lifted his hand. "Miss Hale?" he called. I turned. "Will you stay?" The question echoed louder than it should have. I followed his gaze to the edge of the park, where the lighthouse cast its long, familiar silhouette across the shifting waves. A beacon once ignored, now impossible to unsee. I nodded, the warmth rising up in my chest finally breaking through the frost that had lived there too long. "Yes," I said. "This is home." My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I didn't check it until the crowd had started to drift. A message. From board at westharborfoundation.org. Subject, "Your voice matters." We saw the live stream. "Would you consider joining our board?" It starts with a house. It ends with a choice. The sky was pink when I woke up, that gentle shade of dawn that made the sea look like it had secrets to whisper, not scream. I stood at the kitchen window, barefoot, letting the steam from the coffee rise to meet the cool morning air drifting in through the half-open door. The beach house had never felt quieter, or more alive. This place had been a battlefield, a tomb, a courtroom, and a lighthouse. And now, it was simply mine. On the table, a cream-colored envelope sat next to a mug. The handwriting was careful, slanted slightly to the right. "Vivian, I know words won't be enough, but I needed to write them anyway. Thank you for not slamming the door. I hope someday you'll let me knock again." Lily, I traced the loop of the L with my finger, letting the silence stretch. Then I folded the letter slowly, slid it into a book of Evelyn's pressed flowers, and whispered, "We'll talk, just not yet." Outside, a car crunched into the gravel. Howard stepped out with a soft smile and a brown leather bag. "You look like someone who hasn't yelled at a lawyer in weeks," he said. "Don't jinx it," I smiled, leading him inside. He pulled out a hardcover, worn edges, gold lettering, Hale and Justice, case notes 1962 to 1989. "She underlined the margins," he said. "Everywhere. Thought you might want the law," as she saw it. I held the book like it weighed more than anything else I owned. "I do." 10 minutes later, Monica Reyes stepped onto the porch, camera swinging from her shoulder. "Do I need permission to shoot the keeper of the legacy in her natural habitat?" "Only if you want me to pose," I called. She grinned, stepping in carefully, eyes sweeping the room. "Any big plans now that the battle's over?" I thought about it. The interviews, the board invitation, the weight I no longer carried. "To live," I said. Fully, freely. She nodded once and took a photo of me standing by the window, the coffee mug in my hand and Evelyn's book clutched to my chest. "That's the one," she whispered. After they left, I walked into the yard barefoot, the grass still wet from dawn dew. The old oak post Evelyn used to hang wind chimes from stood steady. I knelt down, pulled a small wooden board from the garden shed and hammered it in with 2 clean nails. Not for sale. Ever. Simple. Final. I sat on the porch after that, letting the wind tangle my hair. A group of kids walked by with kites, and one girl, maybe 9, maybe 10, stopped at the edge of the lawn. She looked up. Big eyes, serious voice. Miss Hale, can I learn how to paint like you? I smiled. Let's start with the sky. The beach house once held secrets, silence, and stolen legacies, but now it stands as a testament to truth reclaimed. Those who tried to bury justice beneath signatures and shame watched their lies crumble beneath the weight of one woman's quiet defiance. Justice doesn't arrive on demand. It waits for courage, for proof, and for someone brave enough to speak when no one else will. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Because in the end, it's not the inheritance that defines a legacy. It's the refusal to let silence win. And no wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth.